Well, today on our cooking show, we were doing a little bit of a different angle. I sometimes kind of agonize over what am I going to make next, you know? So what brought about my idea for today was trying to clean out our house. I think my goal for 2015 is to rid myself of paperwork, sticky notes as much as I can. You know how difficult it is. I live on sticky notes. Okay.
Yes. Simplify is the word.
Simplify. So I am getting rid of all kinds of food magazines and things that I started collecting, I think, in 2007 when I first subscribed to some of these magazines. But what we came up with were a couple of old cookbooks of my mother's. And we figured this one is called Baking Made Easy, was published in, we think,
1931.
And then there's a holiday highlights, which was actually put out by the Home Economics Division of the Wisconsin Power and Light Company in 1956. So clearly these were both born well before I was born. But to kind
You're
of
giving yourself a little
I
extra
know.
space. Okay.
So to coincide with our show today, I'm going to be making desserts for the upcoming Sheltering Hearts event.
Yeah.
And I've donated to this event since 2004. That was the first event, and what's really special about Sheltering Hearts is it's put on out by the Personal Development Center, or PDC, which is an organization in town that helps women and children that are suffering from domestic violence issues. And as most of you know, our daughter Melissa was murdered in October 1st, 2003. And the first Sheltering Hearts event was the following February in 2004. And I vividly remember sitting there as these young women are, you know, talking about the domestic violence situations that they had been living in, and how this one, you know, woman got up and said that she would have been another domestic statistic, violent statistic, had it not been for PDC.
Right.
And I was sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, our daughter Melissa is one of those statistics. And I think people don't like to talk about this. They feel very uncomfortable talking about domestic violence. And probably just about everybody in this town has been affected one way or another, whether it was your own child, a spouse, husband, you know, whatever the case might be. So ever since 2004, we've donated something to Sheltering Hearts, whether it was a cheesecake. That was the first thing I donated, was a cheesecake. And since then, we have donated a tower of cupcakes and 200 cupcakes. And it's really fun to see. That's a live auction item, and it's fun to see how the bidding goes, but you don't really have to buy 200 cupcakes. We also will accommodate party needs, you know, if you want to take it out in cheesecakes or other desserts or whatever. So this is how this event, our show, came about today, is partly because of what can we do. We also try to tie it in to things that we're doing so we can show what we've made as well as demonstrating. So Gary especially liked the Baking Made Easy. So he just wants to share a couple little anecdotes from this book that I'm going to have you read a little bit about what my mother clearly enjoyed. I would assume, as I've talked about, I came from a large family of 12 children, and my mother baked and cooked all the time, obviously, to raise a family.
Right.
And this was obviously one of the books that she must have used when she was coming up with her recipes.
It's well worn, as you can see. The cover is just hanging on by a thread, and there's a couple of little stories, not stories, they're actually, you know, advertisement, if you want to call it that, back in 1931 from this oxidant flour. Some of you may have heard of oxidant flour. This is kind of new to me. I never really paid much attention to it. And then once I saw the name Oxidant, I went on Google and I started reading more about it. And there's a history of the person who started this company back in the 1880s. I think it was 1879, I think, is when this guy started. And his name was, I got a cheat note, his name was John Russell. And he started this out in North Dakota, and this flour milling company, and it grew from one small little flour mill into a dozen, and from there I think it in the end, before he sold it to the Peavy Flour Company in 1954, I believe it was, that they had 137 mills around the Midwest, so it grew exponentially over those decades. But the Occident Company, and again, I'm going to look at my cheat notes, it's called the Russell Miller Flour Company back in the 1800s and early 1900s. And the Occident is the name, and I thought, well, that's an odd name. Why Occident? And, excuse me, Occident was a name meaning coming out of the West. The flour, or the wheat growing business kind of grew in that North Dakota and southern Canada area, and some of the finest hard wheats were grown in that area, and so they chose the name Occident, and I thought that was kind of interesting. And then the Miller name was his son-in-law, Arthur Miller, who came from England, because he was, no pun intended, he was a miller in England. So Arthur Miller teamed up with his father-in-law, and they made the Russell Miller Flour Company. And Occident was the name of their finest flour that they made from hard wheat rather than winter soft wheat. I digress, but let me just, I'm probably boring people.
So
here,
I decided
let me
in this
do a little-
book I wanted to find something that would be apropos to what we're doing for Sheltering Hearts. And I'm going to be making pies for the dessert for Sheltering Hearts this year. And because it's a Mardi Gras theme, they like to have, Cajun food and different kinds of ethnic, foods from the South. And I'm going to be making a Kentucky bourbon pie. It's a bourbon pecan pie. But we also want to be careful for people who might be allergic to different kinds of nuts, so we're making a Toll House pie. So in this book, it talks about pies.
And one of the titles of one of the stories in here is, it's from the home economist person who works in the Occident baking division, and it starts out, "Men like pie. There is hardly any dessert more popular with the male members of the family, so the women who attend our baking schools tell me, than good old-fashioned pie. Good pie caps the meal. Be careful about your pie crust. Light, flaky crust for your pie ensures full appreciation for the filling. A heavy crust spoils the pie and the entire meal. Occident flour bakes into a specially fine pie crust. The high-quality gluten contained in Occident gives the dough strength, which helps immensely in making the intricate cake crust patterns you oftentimes want. This same gluten strength enables you to make a thinner crust because the dough fiber holds together better. And we all know that a fine crust just makes the pie. For the good old standby pie to the fanciest pastry, Occident gives you better baking results, ensured every time."
So with no further ado,
Here we go.
I'm going to show you how to make this Toll House pie. Okay, so I have already melted my butter. Okay, and they want you to have your butter at room temperature, so I melted that earlier this morning. So we are going to crack 2 eggs. And we are going to put those on kind of high speed until the 2 eggs are frothy. Cut this down a little bit, and then we're going to add a 1/2 cup of packed brown sugar. Okay, and stir. A 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. A 1/2 cup of flour, which is not Occident flour. And then we're going to add in our 2 sticks of butter. I always hate to waste any bit of this wonderful batter that you want to include in your baking here.
Right.
So at Sheltering Hearts, they typically have 200 people or more, and our Toll House pies will yield probably 10 pieces. It's very rich. If I were making this for the family, I would definitely want to include the walnuts. It also calls for a cup of walnuts. Now I'm going to add in 1 cup of Toll House semi-sweet morsels. And if you don't happen to buy Toll House, other chocolate chips will work. But it does make this carries the name since it is a Toll House recipe. I have my 9-inch pie crust already made. As I've talked about before, I'm sure on the show, when I make pie crust, I like to make 6 or 8 or 10 at a time. And then I have them all made and they're in the freezer. And then when I want to fill my pie, then I just have to get one from the freezer and they're all set to go. Making pie crust is a little bit labor intensive and messy, so I don't make it all that often.
Right.
Last week I actually spoke to the Women's Christian Connection group, and I was talking to them about pie, how I had made I think 42 pies, Toll House pies one time. Right. For another fundraiser. So in order for me to be able to do that and to make it happen, obviously I have to make the pie crust ahead of time, because I couldn't make the pie crust and the filling the same day that the event is going to take place. So when you make your pie crust, you can make those ahead and freeze them. And I also make these pies ahead, and you can freeze them as well. You can also make this pie, and it can be, I like to keep them in the refrigerator, so I think it keeps them fresher. But you could keep them in the refrigerator for a couple days, in advance.
If they last that long around the house.
If they last that long. This is, again, our kids have so many favorites, and this is one of the favorites. Is really, I think, anything with chocolate chips.
Oh yeah.
So the pie is all made. Okay. Typically, Gary would probably be licking the beaters and the bowl and things, but not on campus. No. So this is our pie without the walnuts, and we're going to bake it in a preheated oven, 325, for 1 hour. So when we're done, this is the finished product. You want it to be rather dark on top, and as I said, it's a very rich pie. So you can, typically you're going to cut your pie into 6 pieces.
Right. If it was an apple pie or a cherry pie or something like that.
Pumpkin, whatever.
This is a very rich pie.
So for this one, I would actually suggest cutting it into 10 pieces.
Probably, yeah.
Just a little piece gives you all of the wonderful flavors that you need. It's a wonderful decadent dessert.
And all the calories you need.
For after this wonderful Cajun meal that I'm not actually sure what they're going to be serving.
Right.
The event is going to be held at River Edge, a golf course. And so this will be the dessert. As I said before,
and it's February 15th. Did you talk about that?
It is February 12th.
12th.
It's on a Thursday.
Well, it's too far away.
It's on a Thursday evening, February 12th.
February 12th.
And we're going to be also, having, as I said, the Tower of 200 cupcakes.
Right.
Will be one of the live auction items, and it's a really fun night. They have a lot of silent auction items, and Renee, the director at PDC, and all of her staff, and Julie Tharp, who is the president of the board of directors for PDC, do a tremendous amount of work, and it's a fun evening, and it's for a wonderful cause, as I said, for women who are suffering from domestic violence, situations.
Right.
So I guess we would just put a plug in for please come out and enjoy this event. And with that, Gary has one little closing that he would like to also read.
Is that from the Electric Company book? The Oxidant Guarantee. Try a sack of Oxidant and make as many bakings as you wish. If you are not satisfied that it is better than any other flour you've ever used, return the unused portion of the sack and get your money back. Now, this is one of the books Ruth found in her cleaning out strategy, and it's, like she said earlier, it was 1956 this was printed. So this was when a lot of electric appliances were coming on the scene from our appliance manufacturing companies. So there's a few little one-liners in here that this is for. The title of this is Informal Entertaining is Now in Vogue. So, number one, ask friends in for a snack or informal meals. Your electric appliances make this now possible. Second, plug in an electric coffee maker for coffee or serve wine hot from the pot itself. I'm not sure about hot wine.
That'd be like a sangria, a warm sangria
Yeah,
or
maybe
something?
that's what it is.
I don't know.
Yeah, anyway, second and thirdly, serve a tray of sandwiches and cupcakes or any food in variety because you are thoughtful and you have a freezer. Another item here. Make fruitcakes in individual fluted cups. If they leave the table, there is no loss as they retain their freshness. Bake them uniformly in the controlled modern ranges. Okay, keep going here. Have adequate light properly placed for all seeing tasks. Another one here is freeze food ahead for company meals. The cook will enjoy them too, as there is no need for hurried preparation. Serve popcorn for informal evenings when friends just drop in. Electric poppers pop every kernel. I have not seen an electric popper that popped every kernel. I want to have somebody tell me where you can find one of those. Another one here is serve house guests as well as your family perfect hot toast in the trusty electric toaster. And lastly, hopefully I'm not boring everybody to death here. Lastly, the family won't have to wait for vegetables, and they will retain their bright color when cooked in the new electric controlled heat saucepan. There you have it.
That is pretty cool.
Wisconsin Power and Light Company, 1956.
And with the research that you've done about the oxidant flour, I think we're going to have to see if there's a possibility
We have to get ourselves
of getting
a bag
some of
that.
this flour.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very humbling. I'm not bragging when I say this. It's very humbling when I hear comments from some of our clients who say the pie they had was the best pie they've ever had, or the cake that we made was the best and most moist cake they've ever had.
Right.
So I can't even imagine how much better these things can be
We'll try some
if we use
oxidant
oxidant.
flour.
So we'll keep you posted.
Yeah.
If we find some of this or order something online, that will have to be on another show.
Right. Well, another thing too, the oxidant flour sacks. Most flour back in the early 1900s up to the mid 1900s came in cloth flour sacks.
Exactly.
And they use, after they empty the flour sacks, they use those empty sacks for dish towels. Perfect dish towels.
Exactly. So I hope you've enjoyed this segment of Cooking with Ruth. It's always fun to have Gary on because he is a wealth of knowledge.
No, I'm not. I sometimes think I am, but yeah, no. But I love history and I love researching stuff like this oxidant flour and to find out that it really is in existence today. So we have to go out
So
and
that's
try.
pretty cool.
We have to go buy ourselves a sack of that, and if we don't like it, you can take the sack back for your money back.
So until next time, happy cooking and happy baking.
There you go.
Oh no, it came up.
That's an 84-year-old book. You tore it off.
Okay,